Ted Bundy was also at Beaumont that evening. A drama teacher at the play saw him follow Debbie toward the parking lot.
Probably he followed her over to the car because his M.O. was that he tried to get young girls to go help him do something with his car. And I would think he probably walked over and said, "Come and help me start my car or do something." And she, being the kind and loving person she was, would have said, "Okay," and went with him to his car and helped him start it. Whether he put her in the car, took her, knocked her out at the point, no one knows, and which we'll never know, but I feel like she went to help him do whatever. She was my oldest child, and it was very difficult. I had a hard time. But I knew right from the very start that something drastically had happened, and she would never be home. I came home, and Trish and I, who was the younger daughter, got on the phone. We had 2 lines in our house, and we both got on the phone and called all our friends and neighbors and said, "Go find Deb." And we had lots of good friends and neighbors that combed the mountain areas that night and everywhere looking for her. But I knew that she was gone, and for nights, well, I slept on the front room sofa for 6 weeks. I didn't ever go to bed. I had lots of dreams at night that somebody drove up out front, and I heard a thud, and it would be her body on the lawn wrapped in a blanket. And it was always so real. I got up and went out there and looked every single night that I heard that. And so I really feel strongly now that Bundy's admitted to the murder. I really feel strongly we're going to find a body, because I felt like every night for 6 weeks I found it, sort of.
Ted Bundy's sexual addiction to violent pornography led to the murder of more than 30 women. Eventually, he was tried and sentenced to death for the sexual slaying of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. But he also told authorities where to find the body of Debbie Kent. On the eve of his death, he granted an exclusive interview to Dr. James Dobson, a psychologist and broadcaster with Focus on the Family, a nonprofit media organization dedicated to the preservation of the family.
For the record, you are guilty of killing many women and girls.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Ted, how did it happen? Take me back.
Is there enough time to explain it all? I don't know. I think I understand it, though. Understand what happened to me. To the extent that I can see how certain feelings and ideas developed in me to the point where I began to act out on them. Certain very violent and very destructive feelings. But as a young boy, and I mean a boy of 12, 13, certainly, that I encountered outside the home again, in the local grocery store, the local drugstore, the softcore pornography, what people call softcore. But as I think I explained to you last night, Dr. Dobson, in an anecdote, that as young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they were cleaning out of their house, and from time to time we'd come across pornographic books of a harder nature than more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store. And this also included such things as, let's say, detective magazines and more hard...
Those that involve violence.
Yes, yes. And it just occurred to me that some people would say that, well, I've seen that stuff and it doesn't do anything to me. And I can understand that. Virtually everyone can be exposed to so-called pornography, and while they're aroused to it to one degree or another, not go out and do anything wrong.
Addictions are like that. They affect some people more than they affect others. Well, but there is a percentage of people affected by hardcore pornography in a very violent way, and you're obviously one of them.
That was a major component, and I don't know why I was vulnerable to it. All I know is that it had an impact on me that was just so central to the development of the violent behavior that I engaged in.
You, as I understand it, were raised in what you consider to have been a healthy home.
Absolutely.
You were not physically abused. You were not sexually abused. You were not emotionally abused.
No, in no way. Those of us who have been so much influenced by violence in the media, in particular pornographic violence, are not some kinds of inherent monsters. We are your sons and we are your husbands. And we grew up in regular families. And pornography can reach out and snatch a kid out of any house today. He snatched me out of my home. It snatched me out of my home 20, 30 years ago. And as diligent as my parents were, and they were diligent in protecting their children, and as good a Christian home as we had, and we had a wonderful Christian home, there is no protection against the kinds of influences that are loose in the society that tolerates.
You feel this really deeply, don't you? Ted, outside these walls right now, there are several hundred reporters that wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
And you asked me to come here from California because you had something you wanted to say. This hour that we have together is not just an interview with a man who's scheduled to die tomorrow morning. I'm here and you're here because of this message that you're talking about right here. You really feel that hardcore pornography and the doorway to it, softcore pornography, is doing untold damage to other people and causing other women to be abused and killed the way you did others.
Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. And I can only hope that those who I've harmed, those who I've caused so much grief, even if they don't believe my expression of sorrow and remorse, will believe what I'm saying now, that there is loose in their towns and their communities people like me today whose dangerous impulses are being fueled day in and day out by violence in the media in its various forms, particularly sexualized violence. And what scares me, and let's come into the present now, because what I'm talking about happened 20, 30 years ago, that is, in my formative stages. And what scares and appalls me, Dr. Dobson, is when I see what's on cable TV, some of the movies, I mean, some of the violence in the movies that come into homes today with stuff that they wouldn't show in X-rated adult theaters 30 years ago.
Most Christians especially have no idea what pornography is really all about. They think that it consists of airbrushed nudity in Playboy magazine. Well, that's pornographic. But if you go in the sex shops on Times Square in New York or in Chicago or Houston or other cities in this country, you will find almost no examples of normal heterosexual behavior. It's not even in there. That's not what they're interested in. You will find examples of homosexual violence, a great deal of that. You find the most horrible stuff, simulated child pornography, where young women, 18 years and 1 day of age, perhaps just barely over the legal limit, will be made to look like little girls with ribbons in their hair and surrounded by teddy bears, with their fathers in the picture in consummate incestuous acts. You find stuff I can't even say to you, as I said, because it's so terrible today.
Incest is a big theme now in most pornography. Lesbian activity in particular, woman with woman, is a big thing. And that's important to lay the groundwork for husbands to talk their wives into letting another woman get into their same bed. And of course that leads to the disintegration of the marriage. But the projection in the pornography is that leads to strengthening the marriage. So new definitions of marriage and family, new definitions of basic morality, new definitions of ethics are coming through pornography, and most people don't see it. Because they're saying this is just skin material. But as a matter of fact, it's transmitting ideas. That's what happened to Shiro, for example. Thomas Shiro is in Indiana State Prison at Michigan City awaiting execution for the murder and brutal rape and murder of Laura Lubbenhausen in Evansville, Indiana. And he did that when he was 19 years old. By the time he was 19 years old, he had raped 24 women, 24 different women. He became obsessed and addicted to pornography when he found his father's hidden pornography. A lot of the adults think they've got their pornography hidden, but the kids find it. Now, at 7.5 years old, he found it, and then he learned about sex in pornography, as we fear many children will learn whose parents leave their pornography or even have their pornography, and that is false definitions. 1, that women want to be hurt. 2, that women want to be humiliated. 3, that degrading of the partner is the most enjoyable thing. Now, Thomas Shiro, to this day, probably believes that women want to be hurt in sex, and so that's what he basically did to all these women. And finally, with Laura Lubbenhausen, he entered her home and raped her over a period of hours, and then he murdered her, and then he used her body after she was dead, because he had never done that before, but he had seen it in the film. Scientifically, we call it necrophilia. And so he used her body sexually after she was dead. He's 19 years old at this time. And so he's always consumed by these visions of pornography.
You look at it after a while, you enjoy it, and it gets to be a habit. It can get to be a bad habit. Then it gets addictive, at least with me. And to where it was uncontrollable, I had to have it. If I could pull them, like, girls out of the pictures in the pornography books, and start them, I would. But since I couldn't do that, I'd go rape.
Pornography's role in the sexual crimes of Ted Bundy and Thomas Shiro is a role that has surfaced again and again among serial killers.
We shouldn't have to wait until we have thousands and thousands of men out there, committing that kind of crime before we start saying, we need to do something about this.
Heals all, but it doesn't. You think over the years, what would she be like today? How many children would she have? What would she be doing? And you just relive all those things over and over, and so you don't forget. And I'm not sure the pain becomes any less.
But I'll tell you, there are lots of other kids playing in streets around this country today who are going to be dead tomorrow and the next day and the next day and next month, because other young people are reading the kinds of things and seeing the kinds of things that are available in the media today.
Ted Bundy's final comments should truly alarm all of us. It doesn't take a scholar to see that there are links between pornography and violent sexual crime, and that the most innocent victims are women and children. Right now, there is a case pending before the Supreme Court of this land called Knox versus the United States that could give increased license to pornographers to sexually exploit children under the protection of the law. And believe it or not, it is the U.S. Justice Department, headed by Attorney General Janet Reno, that is advocated this weakening of our child pornography laws. We must not stand by and allow this to go unnoticed. That's why we here at Coral Ridge Ministries have designed a petition to be sent to Janet Reno, urging her to reverse the government's position in this case and to protect our children. In addition, the results will be sent to major media outlets across the country. Won't you write for your petition today? And when you do, I'll also send you a copy of the book, Pornography. Is Your Family Safe? This book will tell you how you can protect your children and grandchildren from sexual abuse and how to identify and deal with children who have already been abused, and how you can get help if you have been a victim of abuse or are even now struggling with pornography. You'll also learn what you can do personally to combat pornography, not only in your family, but in your community as well. So simply write to me and ask for the book and petition on pornography. The address is James Kennedy, Box 40, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33302. And when you write, please remember that we can bring you these programs and this valuable information only through your prayers and financial gifts. Any gift that you could send now will help us to produce more informative specials like this one, and it is greatly appreciated. And if you can, please send a gift of $25 or more. And if you do, I want to say thank you by also sending you a video cassette copy of this program so that you can share it with others who need to know these facts about this issue. If you wish to send your gift through the mail, just write to me at the address on your screen. If it's more convenient for you to give your gift over the phone with a credit card, we'll also provide a toll-free number for you to do that. The number is 1-800-843-6400. Remember, when you write for your petition, we'll also send you the book. And for a gift of $25 or more, we'll send you the video cassette as well. Perhaps the most sobering point that Ted Bundy made was the fact that the pornography that he was exposed to in his day was not nearly as shocking and graphic as that which is all around us in our time. Children can get it on television, as you just saw, or they can get it through the movies, or by a telephone call, through the mail, or even through computer networks. If we're going to protect our children, we need to know how to go about it. Not only our children, but adults as well, are being terribly affected. And this deluge of pornography has played a part in destroying more individual lives and marriages than we would ever dream of.
Ted Bundy represents what the extreme and escalation can lead to. Now, there are millions of men that are sex addicts. In fact, the estimate is around 6% of the population of males. But not everyone will escalate to that extreme or even near that extreme. In fact, most of them will never do anything that's illegal, even though they will do things which will jeopardize their relationship with intimate partners, with their wives and families and children. Parents, if you have pornography in your home, your kids will find it. I see a lot of parents that say, well, it's okay for us. They hide the videotapes, they hide the magazines and so forth. But always, sooner or later, the kids find it. Not only do they find it, but they use it as a model for their own sexual activity.
I realized I had a problem probably as a child, 12, 13, 14 years old. I started with it as a teenager with various softcore type magazines.
It goes back to when I was a child, actually. Neighborhood boys, experimenting and things like that, and pornography. and masturbation. I discovered pornography when I was, I think, 11 or 12.
Steve Gallagher, like the others, is overcoming sexual addiction, a problem they all admit began at an early age and with soft pornography. Gallagher says his first exposure as a preteen to a Playboy magazine led to pornographic movies, massage parlors, and prostitutes. All of this in secret.
And Kathy and I got married, but she didn't know about the secret life I had going, and I would go in these bookstores, and this continued off and on for several years, and I eventually became a deputy sheriff in Los Angeles, and as a deputy, even though I knew that there was, I had just a great fear of getting caught doing some of these things. It was really the pornography that kept this flame going. And it's like the more pornography I watched, the more I became obsessed with sex with other people.
Steve's wife, Kathy, had enough, and she left him.
The best word to summarize my feelings was I was devastated, very hurt, rejected. I felt abandoned. I felt like you just go through so many emotions, you don't know what to feel. I was mad. This whole thing with Steve, it was a devastating, life-changing thing to find out my husband was sleeping with other women. There's nothing worse that can happen to a woman. That is the bottom of the barrel.
And I was always going out, whether it be late at night or different times, just to get out, participate in sin.
For Mike and Naomi Miller, the story was similar, except for one thing. Mike thought he was practicing his sexual addiction in secret.
We've been married 14 years, and I knew the whole time. So I was dealing with a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. I had a tendency to withdraw and try to live in an unreal kind of world, not deal with what was going on.
When Mike finally confessed his sexual addiction, Naomi's reaction was typical, predictable.
I think I felt rejected, mainly as a woman and as a wife. And I tried to look inwardly at what was it about me that wasn't satisfying my husband.
Mike and Naomi will be the first to admit things are not perfect with their marriage. They are still mending wounds from the past. They are both, however, helping others as counselors for a Christian ministry founded by Steve Gallagher 6 years ago. A ministry he moved to northern Kentucky to help sexually addicted men who feel time has run out for them. 23 men have left their homes, their families, their careers. They have come from all over the country to share quarters, responsibilities, meals, and each other's burdens.
Sexual sin-wise, I've had some problems with some past fantasies of relationships in the past coming up.
All afternoon I started having thoughts, and I finally fell Saturday night and masturbated.
And this weekend I had a tough battle as far as past memories. I think every woman and from every magazine I looked at to every illicit affair that I've had prior to being married, and every place I've been in the service just seemed to bombard me.
I wonder if I hadn't gotten myself involved in pornography and in a lot of things, if I really wouldn't have a whole lot of battles and thoughts.
These men, who will spend at least 6 months at the ministry, all consider themselves normal, the average male. They have no desire to commit any heinous crime. They all have one common denominator, says Gallagher: selfishness.
Strictly a self-centered desire to take care of number one and to live a life of pleasure and to revolve your entire existence around pleasing yourself rather than pleasing God. I think that is the issue, and that is why people become addicted to pornography, why they go out on their wives, and why marriages are falling apart, is because people are just flat self-centered.
And the pattern of progression, or as Gallagher calls it, digression, from soft core to hard and harder core pornography is always there.
During
the course of the period of time that I was married, during those periods when I didn't feel fulfilled in the marriage, I would use pornography, and eventually that led into some serious problems, and I would, yeah, you always go for more.
And if you don't think there's a problem among Christians, think again. Paul graduated with a Master's of Divinity from a seminary. He is a former pastor.
There are a lot of us that have graduated that don't have it together spiritually. It was a voluntary survey to whoever gets Leadership magazine, and the results came back. I think about 60% said, yes, I struggle with lust. And this is church leadership, pastors, education, music ministers, administrators, people like that. I'm married to the most beautiful woman in the world. I have 2 children, a little boy named Josiah. God brings healing. A little girl named Carlisa. I was on the phone with them 2 days ago, and I could barely understand my boy. Daddy, when are you coming home? I have 2 children that are hurting. Every night, my wife has to sit up with them. Where's Daddy? My boy prays for me every night, and he prays. He asks his mother, he says, why does Daddy have to look at bad pictures? That'll rip your heart out. It has got its hooks into me so deep that I act like a fool, and I'm willing to throw away the most precious things in my life.
The Gallaghers feel the church needs to get actively involved in assisting sexually addicted Christians. Meanwhile, Pure Life Ministries offers as help its 43-acre farm and its program of Bible study.
Crying out for help. When we cry, the Word of God is the actual thoughts and words of our Creator. What more glorious thing could we spend our time doing than to read God's Word?
Accountability.
I feel good about myself, but
God has to change our hearts, and accountability can keep us from getting, from staying in that pit and help us to come out of it.
Prayer.
Father, Jesus, prayer life is coming into that close fellowship and relationship with Christ.
And fasting.
We live our lives in so much of the flesh as it is, eating and sex and all these things. And the more we cater to that, cater to the flesh and the demands of the flesh, the more it demands of us. And so if you can work on all the different areas of your life, then you're going to do well at overcoming.
This place, for the first time in my entire life, I masturbated. I couldn't go 3 days. 3 days without masturbation. You know what I'm learning about myself here? It's not our sexual problems, it's the baggage we've carried all of our lives from our childhood. And, there's things that our counselors do we don't like. We hate it. But it's dragging out all this garbage in us. Any man here can tell you. I have a beautiful family. I had a large business. All the money I could ever want in the world. I go to the beautiful church. You think I want all those people to see this stuff. But I hurt so bad inside. If I could save one person. One person.
Perhaps the most significant story emerging in regard to the use of pornography is the story that you have just seen. It's not just the apparent link between pornography and violent sexual crime that is endangering our families, but it's also the effect of what some consider to be softer pornography, of what it can and is having on increasing numbers of men in this country and their families and their marriages. Perhaps the most disturbing of all of the problems connected with pornography is a seemingly apparent link between pornography and child sexual abuse. And though hard figures are hard to obtain because of the secrecy that usually surrounds this issue, One FBI report stated that 1 in 4 of our daughters and 1 in 6 of our sons would be sexually abused or raped before he was 20. And as you will see in a moment, in most of these cases, pornography played a very significant role.
It would be around 2,000, maybe 2,500.
That many?
That many. I was very active in my homosexuality. I was involved with both adolescent boys as well as adults.
Tommy is a convicted homosexual child molester serving time in a Virginia penitentiary. According to sexual abuse psychologist Dr. Neil Van Patten, stories of child sexual abuse, like his, are more common than people would like to believe.
Probably 20% of men grew up having been sexually abused at some point along the way. Between 25 and 33% of adult women were subjected to some form of child sexual abuse while they're growing up. The numbers, in fact, are so staggering that we're starting to find a social backlash.
In the vast majority of child sexual abuse cases, pornography plays a significant role.
One of the things that we do find that is a common denominator among virtually all child molesters is that they go through a fairly predictable sequence of behaviors leading up to the actual sexual assault. And that begins with fantasy. In their own mind, they start to fantasize their preferred sexual outlet. And then pornography becomes a stimulus for these fantasies. So it may start out as a simple fantasy. When that is no longer gratifying enough, then the offender is likely to turn to general pornography as additional stimulus material. They will either read or look at this particular pornographic material and then masturbate to it as a stimulus. After a while, that no longer becomes enough, and then while they are simultaneously fantasizing and masturbating to this material, they'll start to go out, say, and cruise a shopping mall. They'll walk up and down looking at specific children now. The next step after this cruising behavior is he'll actually start to target or isolate an individual child.
Tommy came from this city in southwestern Virginia. He found his young boys here in the city's parks and here at the city library. In the beginning, he looked for pornography to fuel his own fantasies, but in the end, he was producing it himself for other pedophiles.
I was involved with a group in Richmond that owned a studio there. And the boys that I was with, we'd pick these boys up and take them to a motel, take pictures of them having sex with me and with other boys. And we would take these pictures and send them to different countries to have them published in magazines.
The underground child pornography industry is growing, and at least one liberal legal organization is now seeking to protect it. But here at another Virginia prison, sexual abuse psychologist Dr. Sean Meeks has come to understand that pornography is also used by sexual criminals to lure young children.
From my experience with the inmates that I have dealt with, I think pornography is used to lower the inhibitions of the potential victims and to show them that what the perpetrator wants to do is okay because other people are doing it too.
I had been chained to the ceiling with leather straps around my ankles and my wrists.
By your then stepdad?
Yes.
And what would he do to you?
Well, the blood was rushing to my head. My hands and my feet were turning purple. And he would swing me just in the air.
Did he ever say anything to you, what he was doing?
He would do stuff to me, and he would say, does this feel good? And how does this feel? And I had the sense not to say anything.
The world learned about 12-year-old Monique on this nationally syndicated television program last February. She says her former stepfather, now in prison for life, abused her for 8 months when she was only 9 years old.
He just kept on putting me on the bed, just never letting me go. And whenever I tried to get away, I would run towards the door, and he would always grab me. And I couldn't get away. I would hold on to the edges of the wall, and I wouldn't let go. I wouldn't let go. I wouldn't let him take me back into the room. It hurt so much.
Afraid to tell anyone, it became too much for Monique to bear one day at school, too much to hold inside any longer. She told her teacher, who then reported it to authorities. A short time later, her mother, who says she never knew, was handed a search warrant.
And I opened up the search warrant to read that my daughter had been interviewed at school, that she was being sexually abused by my husband, and it wasn't just touching or fondling, but my child had actually been chained and bonded, and human bondage was used on her. And I was in tears. It was just a shock.
It was probably the worst scenario of the abuse of a child I'd ever heard.
Detective John Decker served the search warrant and investigated the case of Monique.
In the home, we were able to recover the restraints that had been used on Monique that were described by her in detail. We discovered some videotape of sexual encounters between adults, magazines of hardcore pornography, sexual aids. We discovered, and I don't remember the exact count, I believe it was like 53 hardcore magazines that dealt specifically with bondage. We found a set of handcuffs, a homemade swing that Monique had described that she would be laid upon. This swing was approximately 4.5 foot long with a headboard that a person could rest on.
He would show me pornographic videos and Playboy magazine, stuff like that. I think that had a lot of effect on what happened to me because, like, some of the movies, they showed nasty things. He would do the things on the movie to me.
Kathy Krennick has been prosecuting child abuse cases for 15 years. Monique's was just one of them.
I think you can draw a connection in this particular case to pornographic magazines that were found in his possession, particularly with an emphasis on bondage.
Monique says she has no inhibitions at all about showing a natural father-daughter affection toward her new stepfather. And with his and her mother's help, she's rebuilding her childhood.
I think the Lord has given my mom the strength to not let me fall, as in to not let me break down and cry over something that has happened 2-3 years ago, but to give me the courage and the strength to go on with my life and to help other kids.
It is transparently clear, if you speak with child molesters, about the vital link between pornography and sexual child abuse. That's why the case that's coming up before the Supreme Court right now, Knox versus the United States, is so critical. If the position of the Justice Department is adopted, a position, by the way, which is a reversal of the position formerly accepted by the Justice Department before the present administration came to power. This position has now been reversed, and if it is held up by the courts, it could give pornographers untold latitude to sexually exploit children under the protection of the law. That's why I want you to have a copy of this petition that we prepared to be sent to Janet Reno, who is currently the head of the U.S. Justice Department, urging her to reverse the government's position and to return to their former position and protect our children. Won't you write for your free petition today? And when you do, I'll also send you a copy of the book, Pornography. Is Your Family Safe? This book will tell you how to protect your children and grandchildren from sexual abuse and what you can do to help rid your community of pornography's influence. So just write to me, James Kennedy, Box 40, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33302. There are important things that any parent or grandparent can do to help save their homes and communities from the blight of pornography. And in this final segment, you'll meet some people who have done just that.
Cincinnati, Ohio, one of the country's most livable cities.
One of the reasons it's so quaint and so nice and so wonderful to live here is because of that quality of life, that sense of family that we have. And I think that's very important.
We're called this wonderful family town.
It's been cleaned up real well. A lot of pride's been put back into the community.
What has been cleaned up is this city's thriving downtown area, once riddled with seemingly countless porn-related businesses and the crime that went along with them.
Good people don't visit these places. They don't go to the stores that sell the books and that kind of trash. So they're not really aware of just how foul these things have gotten.
That picketer, Phil Burris, is now the head of the pro-family organization Citizens for Community Values.
And there were laws against it, but no one enforced it. Police departments were on the take. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, they used to call it Little Chicago. Adult bookstores, peep booths in the back of the room, back of the porn store, where men would go in and put quarters in machines, and they would engage in sexual activity. The peep booths even had holes in the walls between the booths where homosexual men would engage in anonymous sex with each other. Strip joints. We had massage parlors. We had nude dancing. And that caused a horrendous crime problem for us. You can't have sexually oriented businesses without having drugs and gambling and just a complete deterioration of your downtown area.
We had to do something. I mean, it was a serious problem, and we decided to address the problem.
In 1971, then county prosecutor, now county sheriff Simon Lease was presented with 25,000 signatures on a petition urging him to take action. Lease told them he would, and really for a simple reason.
In this state, and I'm sure in every state in this nation, there's an obscenity law, and it's against the law to distribute, sell, or give away obscene material. And I can never understand why those laws aren't rigidly enforced. It was a long, hard struggle. I started in '71, shortly after I became prosecuting attorney. We worked on it approximately 7 years, and in 1978 we finally succeeded in closing it all down.
And the 13-county area, which includes the greater Cincinnati area, which is the 23rd largest in the United States, 1.8 million people, 6 of those 13 counties, we don't even have X-rated tapes in our video stores. No massage parlors, no bookstores, none of it. No nude dancing, none of it.
There is no doubt in Burris's mind, and in the minds of many others for that matter, what is at the heart of Cincinnati's miracle story. What makes it economically more stable, a safer city than 15 or 20 years ago. In short, a better place to live.
Really all we did was clean up our sexually oriented businesses, and things got better.
I don't think there's any question that the city is better today, and this community and this region is better today for the strong stance taken not only by Sheriff Lease, but by county prosecutors and others in the past who have fought hard to keep pornography and the like out of this community. So there's no question in my mind that my kids are doing a little better growing up in this community than I had.
Those people who are transferred from out of town and are very upset about coming to this type of community, once they get here and find out what the quality of life is, they never leave.
If women decide to exert the influence that they so naturally have, we can turn this whole issue upside down. We can make the real difference. And we intend to do just that. We would like ultimately to change the way America thinks about pornography and see that it's not just an entertainment issue at all, that there are victims involved in this.
From Fort Lauderdale to Oklahoma City, concerned citizens all across the United States are rising up to rid their towns of the menace of pornography. And in so doing, they're making their city streets safer.
When we closed down in Cincinnati the adult bookstores, the X-rated theaters, the nude bars, in 1974, in the 5 years that followed, the violent crime of rape and assault and robbery and murder went down 83% in that area of the city.
We can rejoice at what's been accomplished so far, but there's a lot more to be done.
All you got to do is enforce the laws. All that is necessary is for the American people to demand that it be done, and we could change the landscape.
I have no reservation to ask you to pray a prayer that I pray almost every day. I will be whatever you want me to be, do whatever you want me to do, go wherever you want me to go, say whatever you want me to say, and give away whatever you want me to give away in order to see to it that that does not happen. God intends to love the children and young people and families of America and of the world through his people. And this is only one scourge. But the fact of the matter is, this generation of young people is being ravaged by drugs and sex beyond any generation in all history. My child does not have to be raped before I'm going to do something. My grandchild does not have to be raped before I decide to do something. I believe there's not a person listening to me today who, if they saw a man raping a little 5 or 6 year old little girl, wouldn't do anything to stop him. Or if they saw a man raping a little 6 or 8 year old little boy, wouldn't do anything to stop him. How can we allow 2 million children to be sexually abused every year in America and not decide we are going to do something about it?
What you have seen today shows the devastating impact of pornography upon our nation and our families. And it also shows you that there are people that are doing something about it. And for the sake of our children, we must all become involved. What can you do? Well, there is an opportunity right now for every one of you to do something. A landmark case is coming before the Supreme Court of the United States. The Justice Department, prior to this administration, had come down on the side of righteousness to restrict the rights of pornographers. But now, under Janet Reno, the Justice Department is wanting to loosen those laws and make it easier for pornographers to exploit children with the protection of the law. We must not allow this to happen without the American people expressing their positions. This petition, which we have had prepared, will give you an opportunity to let Janet Reno and the Justice Department know how you feel. And we'll also send the results to the major media of this country to let the American people know what is happening. This is something you can do with very little effort. All that is needed for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Won't you do something? Please write to me today and ask for your petition. Just write to James Kennedy, Box 40, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And when you write, I'll send you a copy of the book, Pornography, Is Your Family Safe? And in this book, you'll learn how to protect your family from the evils of pornography and your children from sexual abuse, and how to identify and deal with a child who has been abused, and also how you can be helped if you've been a victim of pornography or are currently entangled in its web of addiction. You'll also learn what you can do to help protect your neighborhood from the influence of pornography. Both the petition and the book are absolutely free. So just write to me today and request them. Here's the address: James Kennedy, Box 40, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33302. We are able to provide specials like this one with information that you're not going to hear anywhere else, and resources like this book that we want to send to you only through your prayers and gifts. Any gift that you can give to help us to continue to produce these programs will be greatly appreciated. But if you can send a gift of $25 or more, I want to express my appreciation and my thanks by sending you a videotape copy of this program so that you can share it with others that you know who could benefit. You can send your gift by mail by writing to me, James Kennedy, Box 40, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33302, or if it's more convenient for you to give your gift over the phone by credit card, we provided a toll-free number for you to do that. That number is 1-800-843-6400. Thank you so very much for your help, and God bless you.